Feelings of shock and anger are still simmering in Oshawa, across Canada's auto sector, and right here in Ottawa. Why is General Motors closing its Oshawa plant after Canada bailed the company out? What happens to its 2,500 workers? The CBC's Susan Ormiston spoke today with one of the plant's senior executives, and she joins us now from Toronto. Hi, Susan. Thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. What does GM have to say about the reasons behind the closure?
Well, some of what you've heard already, that Oshawa was vulnerable. It had no product plan for post-2019. It was working under capacity, and GM is simply switching its energy, its focus, away from internal combustion engines towards electric and autonomous vehicles, or AV. So we asked David Paterson, well, why not switch it out? Why not in Oshawa? Given the Canadian investment in General Motors over the years, why can't electric and AV be made here instead of somewhere else?
I think we would be happy to have any vehicle made here. We would love to have new products that were either traditional internal combustion or electric vehicles for the future. And we'll have a mix of those as we go forward. But your question is,
my question is, why can't they make
electric vehicles
the future here in Oshawa?
We can make anything here in Oshawa. We could make any type of vehicle.
Why isn't GM investing?
Because there's only so many vehicles on a global basis that are available within the production footprint of General Motors. We have about 75 plants around the world, but we have far too many plants for the amount of demand in the marketplace. If there is a surge in demand for electric vehicles, then perhaps there's going to be a need for more production. But you don't produce things unless there's a market demand for the products.
So what does that mean, Susan, for the workers and salaried GM staff?
Well, what he said was that about half the existing workers in that plant are already qualifying for pensions, so they can be pensioned off. The other half, well, that's the negotiation to come, and one of the questions will be whether they can be topped up to pensionable earnings, and that's the next year's job. One of the shifts will be gone by summer already, Vashi, and then there is a cut coming at GM for salaried employees, that is the so-called white-collar jobs all over the world. But David Paterson said the impact will be small comparatively in Oshawa on that front.
Does Mr. Paterson have any regrets about the way the news came out?
Yes, I mean, we know that workers were in shock Sunday night when this suddenly came out. The union said it wasn't told beforehand, and so we asked him about that. Do you feel comfortable with the way this announcement came out?
No,
was that
I don't,
treating
actually.
employees well?
I don't feel comfortable because part of the announcement was leaked before we had the chance to come forward and tell our employees about this first. And generally, when we make a big announcement like this, we gather them together, we tell them first before it's announced. It was leaked by somebody who was briefed in advance, and it wasn't the government. So unfortunately, we had that situation, and that's done, and on we go, and we do the best we can to work with our employees. But listen, I'm affected by this. This is all our family here in General Motors. All of us are facing these types of reductions. This is a really tough day for us here in Oshawa.
How is he describing the future for GM then, Susan?
You know, here's the big news. I mean, this is, if it comes to be, as GM describes, a big transformation. Traditionally, 75% of the technology and build-out has been on the internal combustion engine and vehicles, and 25% on anything else, including electric. He says within 2 years, that will have flipped. So 75% of the investment and engineering effort will be on autonomous vehicles and electric. And he said in that way, there is some good news here for Canadian workers.
The good news is that in terms of that technology, the one place in the world where we are able to do the software development and the high-tech work that is needed for the future is actually in Canada. We've just opened up the Markham Technology Centre. We're hiring up to 1,000 technical engineers right now. We've hired 500 in the last year, and we'll expand that technology centre that's in Markham that will build the cars of the future and the technology of the future.
Going forward, one of the things we need to watch for is what's going to happen to that massive, huge plant in Oshawa. I believe it's about 1 million square feet. I asked him about that. He said, no one knows, but Canada has always tried to attract another car company beyond the 5 that are already operating in the country. It's been unsuccessful so far, but that's one of the things. And then he said, you know, the last full plant to close was in Sainte-Thérèse, Quebec, and that's now a big box store outlet.
All right, thank you, Susan. Susan Ormiston for us in Toronto.